Hello, everyone. Rod Crandall here. I am the Chief Integration Officer for USAdvisors Insurance. I hope you're having your best year ever. On behalf of everyone here at USAdvisors, I'd like to personally thank you for your business and your trust. We know that you have choice in where you place business, and we're glad that you place it with us. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Shane Van Patten today for this webinar. Many of you know Shane. He is our marketing manager. I've personally known him for over 11 years, and he and I were the first and second employees here at USAdvisors. So I've had the opportunity to work with him very closely throughout the years, and I can really attest firsthand to Shane's integrity and his work ethic and really his passion around our business. I would actually suggest to you that among those that are 40 years old or younger in our business and our industry, it's very likely that Shane is in the top 1% of professionals who really understand why and how the long-term care conversation should be had, as well as what the consequences are that can arise from avoiding that conversation. So I would say because of his background, his personal experience with both of his parents, and his professional career, he really brings tremendous value and a very strong leadership voice for our industry. In the next 40 minutes or so, you're going to hear Shane break down how to have the right conversation with the right tone to the right client. And I'm very confident that you're going to leave this webinar with a track to run on so you can more intentionally deal with this planning issue for your clients, as well as knowing and understanding that you have the right back office and marketing support to place the appropriate protection inside the context of the financial plan. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Shane Van Patten. Shane?
Thank you for the introduction, Rod. Before I begin, I would like to share a short story. Have you ever been stuck in the middle seat of an airplane? I have several times, and not once have I been fortunate enough to have the two petite women sitting on each side of me. Instead, here's what usually happens to me. Imagine me sitting there with an open seat on each side of me, thinking I just won the airplane lottery and had a whole row to myself. But just before the airplane door closes, two big burly men enter the plane. Looking around, I begin to realize that there's only two seats available, and they're on each side of me. After these two big burly men make their way down the aisle and into the seats next to me, I immediately start to feel uncomfortable. I start feeling stressed out. I start feeling claustrophobic. I literally start feeling squeezed by these two men. In that moment, there is nothing in this world that I want more than for this event just to be over with. Now imagine feeling this way for the next 5 years of your life. This is the best analogy that I can give you on how I felt in the last 5 years being stuck in what the industry calls the sandwich generation. The last 5 years of my life have been the best years of my life, and they've been the worst years of my life at the exact same time. In the last 5 years, I've gotten married, I bought a new house, I had my first child with another one on the way. On the other hand, I've also had to provide for two parents, both under the age of 70, that have required long-term care and didn't have a plan. Imagine having to travel over 7 hours to provide care for your parents, staying for weeks at a time, away from your family, your friends, and your career. Imagine your father passing away unexpectedly and trying to plan for his funeral and settle his estate while trying to plan for your son's first birthday at the exact same time. Imagine trying to locate the last 5 years of your parents' financial records for Medicaid planning when one parent's already passed away and the other one's in late-stage dementia and can no longer communicate. These are real events that our clients are going through or will be going through on a daily basis. As financial professionals, we are in the position, and I personally believe have an obligation, to help our clients mitigate the severe consequences to their spouses, their children, and their grandchildren when unexpected events happen in life. Currently, as an industry, I don't think we've been doing a very good job preparing families for the severe consequences that are associated with long-term care events. I personally believe that this is due to the fact that we've been poorly trained on how to proactively have the long-term care conversation in a way that's comfortable for both the financial professional and the client. My goal of this webinar is to help you identify common mistakes that we've made in the industry in regards to long-term care planning. And then I want to teach you a new way to have a long-term care planning conversation that is comfortable for both you, the financial professional, as well as the client. So what it looks like having an engaged planning conversation is how to ask the right questions, how to establish a discussion with the client based on reasonable beliefs, and how to establish and finance a plan of care. So let's start with the first mistake that very commonly happens. The first thing is we call it long-term care. When we use the words long-term care, clients immediately start thinking of old age. They think of nursing home. Oftentimes they might even think the conversation's all about insurance. When they hear long-term care and they start thinking of these negative perceptions, the clients typically shut down and become guarded. The tip that I have for this, especially early in the conversation, is trying to use the word extended care instead of long-term care. As the meeting progresses and the more engaged they become, then it's appropriate to switch back to long-term care. The second most common mistake that we make is we've all been trained to use risk-based selling. We've all been trained with the statistic that if you're age 65 or older, you have a 70% chance of needing some form of care, with the average stay being 2 to 4 years. 65 years old, you have a 70% chance of needing some form of care. Those seem like fantastic odds, but they do not motivate clients to purchase long-term care. And the example that I give to people is, imagine every one of my clients were 65 years old, and I sat down and met with each and every one of them, and I offered them 70% odds to win a lottery over the next 20 years. How many of them would play? I think a lot of people would. So the idea is the odds are the same, but one's a positive perception, one's a negative perception. In long-term care, statistics don't motivate clients to buy long-term care insurance. The next common mistake is risk-based selling to men. What you have to understand is that men's brains are hardwired for two tasks: to find food and to protect. A male's brain's been constructed to minimize and eliminate risk. For men, if there's no risk, there's no consequence. Now, women, on the other hand, they generally favor nurturing, raising and protecting children. They acutely understand that risks lead to consequences. So for men, let's use an example of our great ancestors. When they were hunting large animals with just a wooden stick, if they truly understood how risky that was, nobody would have ever done it, and everybody would have starved. So how to approach men? With men, we always allow them to keep their 0% risk. It's not going to happen to me. However, our job is to make sure they acutely understand that there are 100% consequences emotionally, physically, and financially to their family if they ever needed care and there was no plan in place. So when that male looks at it, he gets to keep his 0% risk. He sees the 100% consequences to his family, the people that he invited into his life. Most men will see the 100% consequences as too much, and they will become engaged in having a planning conversation. With women, again, they understand risks lead to consequences. They understand long-term care insurance. Women should be included in every planning conversation, as again, they understand that risks equal consequences. Another common mistake that we make is we bring a product before a plan has ever been established. So let's start with, what does a plan include? Well, a plan includes who's going to provide the care, where's the care going to be received, and who's going to coordinate the care. One example I like to use on this is anybody who's ever had any type of surgery. We'll call it a knee surgery. All I had to do in my family was to show up. Everything was taken care of. But imagine if you had to find the doctor who was going to perform the surgery. You had to find the anesthesiologist that was going to take care of all that. And you had to find all the nurses that were going to support the doctor. You had to find the operating room. You had to find the rehab facility and the nurses that were going to take care of you there. There's a lot of things that go on, and with long-term care, it's generally left to the family. So going back to leading with product before the plan, if there's no plan established, there's no need for the product. Going with this, the next common mistake is that we often overquote. So we often overquote, and usually the typical request that I would get would be, we want to offset 100% of the risk for private room nursing home. We want to make sure that we have 5 years of coverage, and we definitely want to make sure that we look at 5% compounding inflation. A combination of no plan of care, right? If there's no plan, there's no need for the product, and you lead in with a high sticker price or a high price tag, we've just created a perfect environment for the client to politely say, no thank you. The tip that I have here is typically around 80% of care is received in the client's home. So rather than looking at offsetting 100% of the risk or the cost for private room nursing home, we should be focusing on the cost of home care or assisted living. And really the goal is to create a plan for your clients, an insurance product that is meaningful and affordable to them. I let them choose. The next common mistake that we make is that we use assets to justify that insurance isn't needed. What most advisors have to understand is when you carry assets into retirement, they're no longer assets. They're now capital. Capital generates income. Income supports lifestyle. When you unexpectedly invade that capital, the plan's broken. And this isn't even taking into consideration liquidity, market conditions, taxes, lost investment opportunities. Which goes to our next common mistake, income. As financial advisors, we often double count the income. And let me give you an example what that looks like. It's very common a financial advisor will run a plan for clients. We'll say it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and we've created $150,000 a year of income that will last them until they're 90, 92, 95 years old. It's very often I hear, look, if Mr. Smith needs care, all we're going to do is redirect some of that $150,000 and pay for his care. Can we do that? And the answer is yes, you can do that. However, I believe that you can only do that if Mr. Smith is totally incapacitated, flat on his back in a hospital bed, unable to do anything. If Mr. Smith just needs help getting out of bed in the morning, safely taking a shower, and getting dressed before he starts his day, Mr. Smith is still going to want to go on vacation. Mr. Smith is still going to want to go to nice restaurants. He's going to want to go to movies, to plays. Mr. Smith is still going to want to spoil his grandkids. Where do we get the income that's going to support that lifestyle and pay for this brand new expense, which is long-term care? If you take away anything from this slide, is long-term care is not an asset issue. It is a monthly cash flow issue. So let's jump into where I believe the target market is. Target market is roughly 10 years before retirement, which I like to refer to as the retirement red zone for any football fans out there. Clients are typically going to be between the ages of 50 and 65. Some of these clients might be starting to see their own friends get sick, maybe even die. Many of them might be taking care of their parents. For these clients, and pretty much every client, creating a plan of care is a necessity. The tip that I have is if you're using a pre-retirement checklist, is to add the long-term care conversation on the checklist. When the client sees it and they come to the annual review, it's on the list. The plan has to be created, it has to be discussed. So what is long-term care? Long-term care is not a place, like assisted living, nursing home, home health care. It's not a product, like long-term care insurance. It's not even a condition. Long-term care is a disabling event that happens as we age. And if not planned for, it will have severe consequences to the family's well-being. So what is the risk of long-term care? The biggest risk is that people are just living longer than we ever have before. You have lifestyle changes, you have modern medicine. The tie-in for the client is, look, if you have a reasonable belief that you could live to age 80, 85, or even 90 years old, it's reasonable to assume that just due to the frailty of aging, you might need some standby assistance with basic daily activities for a period of years. For financial advisors out there, if you're already running a financial plan, specifically an income plan for your clients, you're probably running them to 85, 90, 92, 95 years old. And if you're running it to 90 to 95 years old, there's already a reasonable belief there for both the advisor and the clients that, hey, I could live to age 80, 85, 90 years old. That is the tie-in to the long-term care. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if you do live to age 80, 85, or 90, isn't it reasonable to assume that just due to the frailty of aging, you might need some standby assistance for a period of years? What's your plan? So if we understand the risk, now we have to understand what are the consequences. What would be the emotional, physical, and financial consequences to the family if there's no plan? The issue is not the risk of the client getting a chronic illness and needing care. That is not the issue. Rather, the issue is the severe consequences to the family if the client does need care. As an industry, I think one area we've already failed on is we call the insurance portion of the planning or the portfolio, we call it risk management. I can't manage the risk of any of my clients becoming frail and needing care. I can't manage that. However, I can manage the consequences emotionally, physically, and financially to the client if it does happen. What are the personal consequences? First one is if a client ever needs care, their life doesn't end. However, someone else's life or lifestyle will end. Providing care to a chronically ill person often makes healthy caregivers chronically ill. If a child ever has to step up, it will severely impact their own life, requiring them to change the way they conduct their own life, family, and career. So what are the financial consequences? Being this is a brand new expense, paying for care disrupts every plan previously created to secure financial commitments or lifestyle. So now I want to talk about creating a long-term care. When I'm talking with clients, it has nothing to do with product, but everything to do with creating a plan. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I want to create a long-term care plan for you that allows you to remain safe in the comfort of your own home. I want to make sure that I protect your spouse and children physically by allowing them to supervise or manage the care, not roll up their sleeves and provide the care. And I also want to make sure that I protect all financial commitments that you've set up for your family, which will allow them to maintain their lifestyle. Once we've created the plan, now my job is to give them an a la carte of options as to what could help pay for the plan. We have Medicare, Medicaid, self-insure, and long-term care insurance. The first option, Medicare. Very simply put, Medicare is health insurance. It will pay up to a maximum of 100 days, which is short-term care, not long-term care. In addition to that, care is received in a skilled nursing facility, not your home. It does not fit your plan. Medicaid. Medicaid is a viable solution for clients that don't have any money. However, if you look at it a different way, Medicaid is a very expensive solution for clients with money. If you have a husband and wife that have $1 million of assets, doesn't matter if it's in his name, her name, or joint, the first thing that happens is that $1 million gets pooled together. In 2017, the healthy spouse is able to keep no more than $120,900. That means we have to spend roughly $880,000 before the state's going to pay anything. That seems like a very expensive option. Another option with Medicaid is any of your clients that are on second marriages and maybe even have a prenuptial agreement. When it comes to Medicaid planning, the states do not honor prenuptial agreements. You either join assets together or they're just not going to pay anything. And finally, care is received in a skilled nursing facility, not your home. It does not fit your plan. The next option is to self-insure or self-pay. Well, again, we have to understand that the long-term care insurance, it's not an asset issue. It is a monthly cash flow issue. The only way a client can self-insure or self-pay is if they can come up with an additional $4,000 to $8,000 a month without disrupting any previous financial commitments. And even if you do have clients that can come up with that additional $4,000 to $8,000 a month, do they want to? A good question to ask them would be, if you ever needed care, would you rather sign the front of the check, or would you rather endorse the back of the check from an insurance company? Clients understand leverage, and when positioned that way, they understand it. And the last option is long-term care insurance. This is transferring some of your money in some form or fashion and transferring some or all the risk to an insurance company. The idea is to help the clients choose a policy that is meaningful and affordable to them. Again, long-term care insurance is not a plan. Rather, the long-term care insurance helps pay for the plan. At the end of the day, the client simply has three choices. They can keep all their money and keep all the risk personally, or they can transfer some of their money and transfer some of the risk, or transfer some of their money and transfer all of the risk. However, the third option, it's very difficult to transfer all of the risk when we have no idea what it's going to cost. Here's some of the client questions that I've used, and I'd like to share them with you, but specifically why I ask them. So one of the questions I ask is, do you believe that you could live to age 80, 85, or even 90 years old? That question is very important to me because if they don't think they're going to live a long life to 80, to 85, or 90, I'll probably talk to them about life insurance and how great the internal rate of returns look. But if they do agree that they could live to age 80, 85, or 90, a reasonable person will believe that if they live that long, just due to the frailty of aging, they might need some care for a period of years. What's their plan? What do you see in the future that could get in the way of a comfortable retirement? What do you think of when you hear long-term care? I personally like this question. It's kind of drawing a line in the sand for me. What are their misconceptions? What are they coming in with? Have they talked to another advisor who led with a product before the plan? Have they been shown a premium of $8,000 a year? I don't know. But by just asking that question, it tells me, are they thinking old age nursing home? Are they thinking insurance? Or are they coming in fully engaged and ready to have a conversation? Have you done any long-term care planning? This also lets me know if they've worked with any other advisors, if they've had this conversation, has there been a plan created? And finally, have you experienced any family or friends that have needed long-term care? I think this is a great question. Clients who have personal experiences in either seeing somebody need care or have been caregivers themselves, this is a great question. If they've had experience, the follow-up question is, was it a good experience or was it a bad experience? I will tell you of any times, which are very rare, that somebody has told me it's a good experience. There tends to be a pretty common denominator. Somebody else provided the care and somebody else paid for the care. But the opportunity is the clients that have had a bad experience. If they've had a bad experience, my question goes to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if you needed care, how would you want your plan to be any differently? The first thing they tell me is, well, first of all, I'd want to remain safe in the comfort of my own home, not that nursing home. I definitely want to make sure that I protect my spouse physically by having somebody else provide the care. And I definitely want to make sure that my spouse is taken care of financially, so he or she can maintain their lifestyle. I believe there's a huge opportunity of the baby boom generation that we failed as an industry. They're either too old, their health has changed, or they're already into their plan and they haven't planned for this brand new expense called long-term care. I believe there's going to be a lot of bad experiences out there over the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's going to drastically affect the children and the grandchildren. It's going to be such a powerful bad experience that they're going to be seeking out financial advisors to help put together plans for them. Our job is to help coach them on how to create a plan, what could pay for the plan, and select a product that's meaningful and affordable to their situation. So just to summarize here, I really look at it as a four-step process. Step one is we have to establish that the client could live a long life. And if they do live a long life, just due to the frailty of aging, they may need care over a period of years. Step two, the second key agreement, is the client must clearly understand what the emotional, physical, and financial consequences are to those they love should they need care. Step three is to create a plan. I want to create a plan for you that allows you to remain safe in the comfort of your own home. I want to make sure that I protect your spouse and your children physically by allowing them to supervise care, not roll up their sleeves and provide the care. And finally, I want to make sure that I protect all previous financial commitments, which will allow your family to maintain their lifestyle. And finally, the fourth key agreement, the client must clearly understand that long-term care insurance is the only viable solution that will help pay for their plan. So what's the call to action? I strongly encourage you to call your marketing manager, myself, Andrew, Rod Crandall. But some of the first things that you need to do is make sure that you have the health line of authority on your insurance license. You want to make sure that if your state requires long-term care training, that you have that completed. We have lots of resources available at USAdvisors Insurance of overcoming common objections. We can provide different education on different types of long-term care funding vehicles, products, where they fit, how they work, and then continuing to learn. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to obtain a designation called CLTC. This designation and the training that I received behind it, they really made it very simple for me. Really, the idea is how can we create a conversation that is comfortable for both the financial professional and the client. And the training and the education that you receive through the CLTC designation is fantastic. The last part is to profile your business. Again, looking for those clients in the retirement red zone, roughly 10 years before retirement, ages 50 to 65. And keep in mind that every single one of them needs a plan of care. Again, we're not talking about insurance product. We're talking about creating a plan. Where do you want to receive care? Who's going to provide it? Who's going to quarterback it? Then we talk about, what could pay for that plan. Now, you might have a lot of clients that are Medicaid likely, and that's okay. However, they still need a plan, and that's our job as financial professionals to help guide them. If you have any specific questions for me, my contact information is up there right now. Be reached at telephone or email. And with that, Rod, I'll pass it over to you to give us the summary.
Oh, great job, Shane. Yeah, really great stuff. So everyone, as you can see, having this kind of conversation can only bring good things. Our experiences with this kind of conversation is going to help us literally help more clients. We're going to protect your assets under management and ultimately drive more revenue to your practices. And what we'd also like to encourage you to do is to stay tuned for part 2 of this program. Using Shane's outline here in the context he's created, I'm going to be walking through my methodology on a role-playing basis for how I have conducted the meetings on a point-of-sale basis with clients to get them the information that they need in the right kind of context so that they can make good decisions for themselves and for their families. And so with that, once again, on behalf of the USAdvisors Insurance team, I do want to thank you for your business. As Shane mentioned, please reach out directly to me or Shane or Andrew, and we'd be happy to help you and help your clients through this process. So with that, again, thank you so much, and make it a great day.